This is the last lesson regarding in-game objects. We're going to finishing up our enemy tiles from the previous lesson by respawning them with a maximum interval of 1 enemy per platform. If you open tiles here, you can see I've already created a new category called killers. That's where we're going to fill up with a lot of enemies. So let's move into the script. We're going to move into the level creator, and we're going to do the same thing as we've done in lesson 1 here. We're going to fill up 10 enemies into the killer category there. So I'm just going to do one more for loop here, and we can actually just copy paste one of these in, since it's basically the same thing. I'm going to change this one to temp 5 just to don't mix them up, and we're going to do enemy and move it into killers. So next off, we need to check the off out of bounds value as well. So we need to add it into this function. So case enemy clone. This one is gonna need to go back to killers. So I'm gonna copy paste again, change it to killers. And the out of bounds check is done for the enemy tiles as well. We need to keep track of if the tile has already been added, or if the platform has already gained a tile with an enemy on it. Since we can't respawn 2 enemies next to each other, the player won't make the leap. So we're gonna limit it to 1 player or 1 enemy per platform. So I'm gonna do a check here, just a bool to keep track of if it's added to that platform or not. So I'm gonna add a private bool, and I'm gonna name it added enemy or enemy added, and I'm gonna set that one to false since no enemies added at the moment. And we're going to reuse it into our randomize function. So we're going to create a function called randomize enemy, and the name is pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to go through it. So randomize enemy, and if enemy added is already true, we don't need to randomize anymore, so we're just going to return. But if no enemy is added, I'm going to create a random range here, so we can actually randomize if this tile will have an enemy or not. So let's do a new if statement here, and we're going to do a random range. That will be an int, and if that int is between 1 and 4, or it will be randomized between 1 and 4, and if that one is equal to 1, then a tile is going to be added. So this is actually making the possibility of adding an enemy 1 to 3. So we're going to go ahead there and grab 1 enemy from the killer category. So let's do a new enemy here and get it from the collected tiles. .transform .find child, and we're going to look for the killer child, and within that we're going to get the transform .get child. And since all childs are the same in this category, we can grab the first one and then grab it as a game object. As before, we also need to set the parent. So we're going to change the current parent to the game layer. And now we need to set the position. So we're gonna get the tile pos here as we done before, but we're gonna do a little bit different regarding the height. So let's go ahead first, set the transform dot position to a new vector 2, and we're going to do the same regarding x as we did before. So it will be tile pos dot transform dot position dot x, and we need to add tile width. Since this is the position of the last tile added, we want to add this to the new tile. So we're just going to add the width of the tile for that one. And now we need to do the y here. So we're going to do the tile pos dot transform dot position dot y, and we're actually not going to do that one. We're actually going to use the startup position, of course. So we're going to do the same thing as before. But for this one, we're going to offset it by the level of the height times the tile width. And for that value, we also need to add tile width times 2 to place the enemy onto the actual ground. So let's do semicolon and height level times tile width, and also add on the tile width times 2. That will place it directly on the ground. To finish off, of course, since this is the function adding the enemy added equals true. Now we need to call this function, and we're going to move up here into the spawn tile. We don't want to create a new enemy on the left tile or the right tile, because the player won't be able to make the leap between platforms. So it's only on the middle tiles we can create the enemies. So let's go ahead and add the randomized enemy into the middle counter here. That's where we create tiles or middle tiles. And once all these are created, we don't need to keep that enemy added true anymore. So we can snap back into false. Private void here. So that should be enough. Let's move into the scene here. Press play. And look out for some enemies. There you go, the first one. Oh, the second one. Oh, I'm dead. So that's all for the in-game objects. In the next lesson, we're going to take a look at the GUI elements, and we're going to implement the MD5 cryptated database.